What do you call a fish with no eyes?
I don't know. What do you call a fish with no eyes?
A fish.
You must be crazy if you think that's funny.
You're the one talking to a fish.
We're back with another page. I love the pages, especially this one with his fish in a cup. It all looks a bit Monty Python, so it's right up my alley before we've even started. He's a very dandy looking gentleman, certainly one of the best dressed characters in the Minor Arcana.
Here we have a likely looking gentleman, seen here wearing suede boots and salmon strides, tulips from Amsterdam on his tunic and a very elaborate hat. Give us a twirl. He's certainly hip to the jive, Daddy-O, and it's all topped off with this season's must-have accessory, a fish poking out of a cup.
We always get that kind of student quality with these cards and the youthful enthusiasm that goes with it.
Vegetable rights and peas.
According to Arthur Edward Waite in The Key to the Tarot, a fair, pleasing, somewhat effeminate page of studious and intent aspect contemplates a fish rising from a cup to look at him. It is the pictures of the mind taking form. So I think there's a definite playfulness to this card, but with his comment about the pictures of the mind taking form, I think the page is kind of toying with a new idea. He's been thinking about something and now it's starting to take shape in his mind. That's what the fish represents.
He's planning on making a splash, but he needs to start on a small scale.
So that can be any new avenue that we're thinking about going down, but at this stage it's about letting our minds wander about all the possibilities that could lead to. So in some ways this card is similar to the 7, in the sense that it's about letting our imaginations run wild. However, where it differs is that the 7 of Cups was more about getting lost in our imagination and not really doing anything with it. This card is more about mentally playing with new ideas and imagining what effect they could have on our lives. Rachel Pollack says no outside demands disturb his or her gentle contemplation. As a result, the fish of imagination looks back at him from his cup. In the Thoth deck we've got the Princess of Cups, and wow, it's all going on there. Around the princess we've got a flying fish, a turtle, a lotus and a swan. Aleister Crowley says she's represented as a dancing figure, robed in a flowing garment on whose edges crystals are seen to form. For her crest she wears a swan with open wings. So it turns out the swan is actually a very impractical looking hat, while the turtle supports the weight of the whole world itself. He says this is again the tortoise, which in Hindu philosophy supports an elephant on whose back is the universe. Now the words turtle and tortoise seem to be getting used interchangeably here. Tortoises are the slow moving creatures that just kind of hang around and eat lettuce. If it did carry the universe on its shell, I think we'd all be taking a very long journey around someone's back garden. But anyway, this goes all the way back to the world turtle in Hindu mythology, who's known as Akupara.
Are you pronouncing that properly?
I don't know, it's got those line thingies on top of the letters, so it could be anything, but there it is in Sanskrit. So the basic idea is that the world rests on the back of 4 giant elephants, who in turn sit on the back of an enormous turtle, who swims through the universe. Now if we've got any Terry Pratchett fans here, you might recognise that idea from his Discworld novels, but I digress. Crowley goes on to say she's dancing upon a foaming sea in which disports himself a dolphin, the royal fish, which symbolises the power of creation. I had no idea what he meant by royal fish, so I looked into it, and it turns out that since 1324, all dolphins within a 3-mile radius of the UK are officially the property of the royal family, together with whales, sturgeons, porpoises and swans.
I bet they own all the king prawns as well.
So there's our royal fish, not poking out of a cup this time, but hurtling through the air. Now if you've watched any of the videos for the court cards in the suit of wands, you'll know that we've got a slightly different naming convention in the Thoth deck. The Waite-Smith deck went for kings, queens, knights and pages, but that wasn't good enough for the Thoth. They went for knights, queens, princes and princesses, just to make my life as awkward as possible.
Yes, I'm sure that's why they did it.
According to Milo Duquette, he cannot overemphasize the importance of the relationship between the ace of each suit and its princess. The ace may be beautiful to look at, but because it's the root, the hidden germ of its root and element, it's impossible to understand. This goes back to the concept of the ace being the essence and the blind force of each suit, while the princesses are considered to be the realised and tangible aspect. He goes on to say the princess on the other hand represents the end product, the crystallisation and materialisation of what was purely potential in the ace. The Sforza and Marseille cards are pretty straightforward, although it looks like the page on the Sforza card got up too late and only put 1 stocking on. We've all been there. The Solar Busker card has got a fella making a lovely pot of exploding tea. He's also managed to get 2 stockings on, so well done that man, even if they are odd. I feel like there's some kind of Weiser related symbolism here, but I'll be buggered if I can find out what it is.
The small earthly being who sheds its germ of life could not be better placed than next to the patient.
Well, of course. I mean, where else would you put the small earthly being?
What's this?
I don't know.
The Hermetic title for the Page and Princess of Cups is Princess of the Waters.
Princess of the Waters is straightforward enough. In a way, you could look at this as Princess of Emotions, which is what the water represents. The other titles for this card are Lotus of the Palace of Floods. Sounds like a plumbing issue to me. Throne of the Ace of Cups and Empress of the Nymphs and Undines. So a nymph isn't just someone who gets a bit frisky, but it's also a kind of spirit of nature, and the Undine is the watery version. This goes all the way back to Greek mythology, but it was a 15th century Swiss alchemist named Paracelsus who coined the term. He believed that each of the 4 elements had a spirit assigned to it. Salamanders for fire, sylphs for air, gnomes for earth, and undines for water. So we saw plenty of salamanders all over the Wands cards, and now it's the turn of the water nymphs. Undines have found their way into all kinds of famous tales, including The Little Mermaid.
Why do you wear seashells?
Because I grew out of my bee shells.
In the same way as the Ace, the Page and Princess of Cups take up the 90 degrees of the zodiac wheel that incorporates Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius.
So we're back to the connection between the pages and the aces. I've talked before about how the other court cards rule quadrants of time in the zodiac, while the pages and princesses rule quadrants of space. In the case of the Page of Cups, that gives us Libra, Scorpio and Sagittarius. Now I'm talking specifically here about the system used in ritual magic. There are countless ways of corresponding tarot cards to the zodiac. I've seen the page associated with Pisces, Cancer, or some people just go with the 3 water signs, and that's all fine. Whichever way you want to do it is entirely up to you. However, and this may sound bizarre, but this isn't actually a tarot channel. It's a channel dedicated to ritual magic, so I'm using the correspondences that come from that point of view. As we know, Arthur Edward Waite conceived the Rider-Waite deck, and Aleister Crowley conceived the Thoth deck. They were both members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, so those are the system they used to put their tarot decks together. I'm saying all this because I've had people in the comments shouting at me in capitals saying, no, that's wrong. And I'm like, look, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what the people who designed the tarot did. If you want to do it your own way, fill your boots.
I've always corresponded the Page of Cups to bodily fluids.
Okay, that's perfectly valid.
The Page of Cups resides in the world of Briar and sits at the 10th Sephira of Malkut, together with the 10 of Cups.
So we're staying on planet Earth for this one. All the pages and princesses live at Malkut, together with the 10s. Now we talked earlier about how the pages and princesses are connected to the aces. As we know, the aces live in Keter, which is right at the top of the tree, while the pages and princesses are all the way down here in Malkut, so they're connected by being at either end of the middle pillar. This effectively means that we've got a connection between the potential and the manifest aspects of the Suit of Cups. We're still in the watery world of Briar, so that would be how our emotions form in our mind at the top of the tree, right down to how we act upon them at the bottom. According to Samuel MacGregor Mathers in the Kabbalah Unveiled, the number 10, from this 9th Sephira came the 10th and last, thus completing the decade of the numbers. It is called Malkut, the kingdom.
The Page of Cups herb is Damiana. Also known as the love herb, Damiana is a powerful aphrodisiac.
But what does it all mean?
The Page of Cups, like all the pages, represents youthfulness, so we're talking about the emotional aspect of that here. A more thoughtful version than what we saw in the Page of Wands. That can relate to our own kids, or it can be the relationship to our parents, because no matter how old we get, we'll always be the pages and princesses to them. New beginnings is another meaning. As it's the Suit of Cups, there's the emotional side to that, so we're talking about new relationships.
You said that about the Page of Wands.
I know, but that's more about the passionate and rumpy-pumpy side of things. In the Page of Cups, we're talking about when you start catching feels for someone, getting butterflies in your stomach, going off your food, or suddenly appreciating the music of Barry Manilow. The way she flicks her hair, the way he farts when he bends over, that kind of thing. Waite says, fair young man, one impelled to render service and with whom the querent will be connected. The studious youth. News, message, application, reflection, meditation. Also these things directed to business. So we've still got that idea of a messenger, so some kind of news that stirs the emotions can be connected to this card. I've seen it be associated to pregnancy, and I think you could definitely class that as some news that would stir the emotions. When he says these things directed to business, I don't think he's referring to the financial side of things. As it's the Suit of Cups, I think it's more about coming up with a business idea that would be emotionally rewarding in some way. That takes me back to the quote, "Do what you love in the service of people who love what you do." There's also that sort of dreamy, imaginative aspect to the card. Rachel Pollack says he represents a state or a time in which contemplation and fantasy are very proper to a person. The Thoth card goes down the emotional path with full gusto, so the two cards definitely tie together in the sense of emotional intimacy. Crowley says the character of the princess is infinitely gracious. All sweetness, all voluptuous, gentleness, kindness and tenderness are in her character.
If the cards are being read for a lady, it announces nice gifts to her from an old aunt.
Ooh, sounds like someone's getting some lovely new soap for Christmas.
In general, this card in the upright is a sign of considerations. What are you doing?
I'm considering.
Well, what are you considering?
I'm considering what the hell it could possibly mean. When the Page of Cups appears reversed, it can mean that the thoughtfulness has flown out of the window and now we're acting on impulse. Waite says reversed, taste, inclination, attachment, seduction, deception, artifice. Taste? Maybe he's talking about the flamboyant outfit that he's wearing. Anyway, I'm still stupid, so I had to look up the word artifice. Apparently it means clever or cunning devices used to trick and deceive others. So a bit like the Seven of Swords really. Stay tuned for that one. Anyway, the inclination part is about not looking before we leap. Rachel Pollack says reversed therefore means to follow our inclinations, to act without thinking, or to allow our immediate desires to seduce us, particularly if they go against our common sense. The Thoth card has some negatives, but Crowley wouldn't have any of it. I think he had the hots for her. He said on a superficial examination she might be thought selfish and indolent, but this is quite the false impression. Silently and effortlessly she goes about her work.
Reversed, it indicates that annoyances will soon cease.
I'll be honest, I'm not holding out much hope for that one. The big takeaway for the Page of Cups is youthfulness, imagination and emotional beginnings. It doesn't matter how old we are, there will always be that youthful aspect of ourselves that still gazes in wonder at the miracle of creation. Franz Kafka once said, "Youth is happy because it has the capacity to see beauty. Anyone who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old."
Thank you for making it all the way to the end of the page. Haha, get it? May the coming days bring you reflection and the inclination to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.